I hereby call to order the regular meeting of the Village of Pinehurst Planning and Zoning Board for December 4th, 2025. The time is 4:01 p.m. My name is Matt Jones, and I will be chairing tonight's meeting. We do have a quorum here tonight, so we can conduct business. I'll ask the board members to introduce themselves to members of the public, starting from my right.
Bruce Hieronymus.
Oh, sorry, my far right.
Was that loud enough for you?
Devin McFarland.
Bruce. Yep, here.
Now it's my turn? Yeah. Bruce Hieronymus. That was for Maria.
Bill Colmer.
Ed Krogolski.
I want to welcome everyone here to our meeting. If there's any member of the public who is here for either of the two public hearings for the Planning and Zoning Board, we do have sign-up sheets in the back, and if you wish to speak, please avail yourself to the sign-up sheet at any point in the next few minutes. According to our published agenda, we do have the minutes from our November 6th regular meeting to approve. Board members should have received a copy and reviewed. Any comments on the minutes from the November meeting as recorded? No comments. And does anyone care to make a motion with respect to those minutes?
I move to approve the minutes of the November 6th, 2025 regular meeting.
Second.
Motion by Bill, second by Devin. All in favor?
Aye.
The minutes are approved as recorded. The next item on our agenda is a public hearing pertaining to a rezoning request for 7941 U.S. Highway 15501. I would like a motion from the board to recess our regular meeting and to enter into our public hearing.
I move to recess the regular meeting and enter into the public hearing.
Motion by Devin,
Second.
second by Bill. All in favor?
Aye.
We have now entered into the public hearing. Michael, if you'll lead us in the staff presentation.
Good evening, everybody. I just want to remind everybody that is going to use the microphone, please speak clearly into the microphone so we can be heard by everybody that's watching and all those folks out there. So, yes, so this is a conventional rezoning request for 7941 U.S. Highway 15501. This is the purpose of this hearing is to consider an official zoning map amendment for approximately 12.27 acres of land located at 7941 U.S. Highway 15501 and further identified by parcel IDs 000-21713 and parcel ID 000-22802. This proposed map amendment would rezone the property from R5, which is a high-density residential, and there's a small piece of R20 at the south end, which is medium-density residential, to neighborhood commercial. The property owner is Tommy's Rental, Inc., and the applicant is Mubarak Shabain. So the current land use right now is R5 and R20, which are high and medium-density residential, and the parcel 21713 has the existing service station on it, and the parcel ID 22802 is vacant. The proposed zoning is neighborhood commercial. The public hearing was posted, adjacent property owners were notified, and the hearing was published. So a little bit about a conventional zoning map amendment. It's a legislative decision and process which requires a public hearing. Request constitutes a conventional zoning map amendment and does not provide for the inclusion of conditions. All allowable uses in the neighborhood commercial district will be available to the applicant and subsequent owners if approved. No general concept plan is required. A public hearing will be held by the Planning and Zoning Board on the proposal and will forward a recommendation to Village Council. The public hearing allows the Planning and Zoning Board to consider adopted comprehensive plan and other plans, staff recommendation, and input from the public in their deliberations. And this is a little bit of the conventional zoning process. We are at the middle part right here with the Planning and Zoning Board, public hearing. This is a conventional zoning approval for 12.25 acres of R5 and R20. if the properties were rezoned, all applicable uses for the neighborhood commercial would be allowed. And over here to the right is a little bit of the compare and contrast of what's allowed in R5 and R20 and NC, and just the difference between each one of those. So the properties are located within the Village of Pinehurst Extraterritorial Jurisdiction, the ETJ. It is located at the northern end of the village limits and can be accessed by US Highway 15501. The site access includes 1,290 linear feet of road frontage along US 15501, and each parcel would meet the dimensional requirements of the NC zoning district of 10,000 square foot lots and width of 75 feet at the street line. We do have some environmental concerns on this property with the topography, the floodplains, and the wetlands. As you can see, the existing building is right here. We do have some wetlands, the white right here that come up to it, and this is the Nicks Creek floodplain here, in the blue. And as you can see, the contours in this area, it gets pretty steep on the south end of this property, and it especially down at the very southern end towards 15501. Public water is available to the site. There's no public sewer there. The site is in Nicks Creek watershed, the WS3 watershed, which limits the built upon area to 24% of the total lot area. Compliance with this requirement will be verified by staff at the time of the building permit review for each lot. And here is the designation in our conservation and growth map. Right now, for our 2019 comprehensive plan, this area is suburban neighborhood designation. But the proposed zoning of the neighborhood commercial conflicts with this recommended land use as identified on the conservation and growth map on page 62 of the 2019 comprehensive plan. Furthermore, the proposal is not supported by the guiding principles from this plan. If the rezoning request were to be denied, the existing service station would be allowed to continue as is. Here's some of the area, and we have a mix of Moore County zoning and Village of Pinehurst zoning in the area. To the north, we have some R5, which is Village of Pinehurst, and some RA40 and RA20, which is Moore County zoning, which are residential. To the south, we have R20, which is Village of Pinehurst. To the east is all residential R5, which is the Village of Pinehurst zoning. And across 15501 to the west is all Moore County zoning, which is a mix of residential and highway commercial and neighborhood business zoning districts. So the couple of guiding principles that could be applied to this area, the plan calls for balancing conservation and growth, calls for the need to conserve land while allowing purposeful quality development in strategic locations. Rezoning to the NC district would continue to allow for the redevelopment of the property to a conforming use, thus replacing the existing service station with a quality development in a strategic location. Furthermore, the proposal is not supported by the guiding principles from the plan. Guiding principle number 5, taking care of business. The plan calls for the support of golf, tourism, and healthcare industries that make up the backbone of the community by encouraging entrepreneurship, supporting diverse and innovative businesses, and developing thriving arts, culture, and entertainment markets. Encourage a variety of shopping, dining, and cultural opportunities for residents and visitors alike. So the Planning and Zoning Board action, what you guys are here for, to conduct a public hearing, review the material along with the staff recommendation. After holding the public hearing, the board should take one of the following actions. Recommend approval of the request and find that the proposed amendment is or is not consistent with the conservation and growth map of the 2019 comprehensive plan. Recommend denial of the request and find the proposed amendment is not consistent with the Conservation and Growth Map of the 2019 Comprehensive Plan. If additional information is needed or items are not fully addressed, the board can continue the public hearing. A decision should be made within 30 days of the first public hearing. Otherwise, the village council may consider the request in the absence of a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Board. So just to summarize all that I've went through here, the proposed amendment would allow for the long-standing non-conforming use as a service station to be conforming with the NC zoning district. Converting the existing non-conforming use to a conforming use could reduce long-term regulatory issues and thus allow redevelopment under current standards, potentially improving the site layout, access, management, safety, and produce a higher quality development. Any future development would be consistent with the existing use and would be required to meet all adopted standards. The location of the property on US Highway 15501 is suitable for the existing use. Single-family homes fronting US Highway 15501 would be less compatible. Approval of the request would not be consistent with the land use designation on the Conservation and Growth Map in the Comprehensive Plan, but the approval of the rezoning would amend that map to a suburban center designation. And that's the end of my presentation, and I will take any questions the board may have.
Thank you, Michael. Board, questions for Michael on the staff presentation, any materials he's presented?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Bruce.
Do we, you mentioned in your presentation, or you referred to a building permit. Are you aware of the intent of the property owners?
I'll let them speak to that.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Well, sorry, just a minute. We might have a couple more questions for staff, and then we'll invite you guys to come up and introduce, so you're good.
Hey, Matt, could I clarify a few items on the staff presentation? So, you heard Michael go through a couple of, you may have heard the term a couple of times, not supported by guiding principle. That's not correct. That's not what we intended to convey. The staff report speaks to it in a little bit more detail. What we have determined and what we have highlighted to the board, as Michael did cover in the staff presentation, the staff report, is that the current designation for that property in the Conservation and Growth Map and the 2019 Comprehensive Plan, which is something the board should look at in considering these types of applications, basically follows the underlying zoning, the existing zoning. So it's shown as a suburban neighborhood, right? This proposal to change the nonconformity into a conformity and with the neighborhood commercial zoning designation is not consistent with that land use designation on that map. For those who, the Conservation and Growth Map is a lot. What that really is intended to convey in our comp plan is a future land use map. Now, the guiding principles that staff pulled apart in the staff report and that Michael covered, and we tried to grab everything in the comp plan that could be applicable for this application. We weren't opining on whether or not it was not supported. I think mainly most of those you could adjudicate either way that it could be or could not be supported. So I did want to clarify that. And I do think it is important to note that if this rezoning were ultimately approved, it does then amend that future land use map so that it is consistent with the approval from the local governing board.
Right, thank you, that's helpful. It was said a couple times and worth clarifying. So, in that vein, what is there right now is R5 and R20.
Correct.
And what's being requested is the neighborhood commercial.
Yes.
And the density, the residential density for R5 and R20, how does that compare to what the neighborhood commercial residential density would be?
R5 is a 5,000 square foot lot. R20 is a 20,000 square foot lot. And this NC is a minimum of 10,000 square foot lots.
Yep. So for the R20 portion, it would be half of what?
Yeah, but
Potentially.
I mean, the R20 portion is minimal at the very south end of it's not really, I don't know why it's there, but it's very minimal.
Yeah, it's clear that if you look at the zoning map that, you know, the zoning designations don't clearly follow the parcel lines in that area. And, you know, we don't have that knowledge on how or why that zoning designation got applied. And, you know, this is in our ETJ, so this likely came into our zoning jurisdiction in the late 80s when we extended our ETJ authority there. And it may have followed a property line at that point in time. And the neighborhood, the residential neighborhood in our ETJ, up to the east and the southeast of that property, as you saw in that existing land use and zoning map, is all R5 as well. So I would imagine that it was a easier map exercise at that time to just include everything to follow what that existing residential land use pattern was at that time.
Can you put that zoning map up there real quick, Michael? Thank you. So, yeah, so to your,
R20's right down here, so it's a
so right
small-
now, a majority of the property has a 5,000-foot minimum, and the neighborhood commercial would increase that to 10.
10,
So,
yeah,
okay.
but both those parcels easily conform to that.
Yeah, okay, that's,
And if you're trying to look at and weigh, and this may lay into a little bit of what Bruce was asking about, you know, any type of future development there on that property, you really have to consider, if you want to look at developable land on that parcel, again, as Michael highlighted here, you can basically cut that top third of that property off. That's not going to be tabbed for any type of development. So most of it will be there to the south, no matter what zoning would continue here on this property. And that's obviously the point that narrows the most on that property. So with setbacks, it's, you know, the development on this property, no matter what, is going to be challenging.
that's helpful.
Looking at most of that, if it stays R5, I mean, I don't know how you're going to develop single-family lots on that, most of that.
I have a question for staff regarding the existing structure. You said it was a service station.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Is there any plan or conversation about if that, I'm guessing, essential resources moved, where that would be relocated to, or who's liable for that?
Are you talking as part of the floodplain or the?
If development went on here, my understanding was that that service station would be removed.
Well, yeah, I would let them speak on that, but
Okay.
yeah, I'll let them
Okay.
speak on their plans.
Well, we can go ahead and bring the applicant up if you guys are good.
Unless
Okay,
somebody
cool.
has something else for me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. We'll now hear from the applicant, after which we'll use the sign-up sheet to open up for public comments within this hearing. So I would now invite the applicant up to the table. You may sit, introduce yourselves, and then begin your presentation.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
My name is Cody Norrod, and I'm with Rayford Development.
Good afternoon. My name is Carlo Pardo. I'm a licensed North Carolina civil engineer with the firm Morrison Ritchie Associates, North Carolina.
So our plan right now for the site is pretty much for the gas station. We're going to pretty much get rid of it, and we're going to build a new one that's going to look a lot better. The one that's there now is kind of an eyesore, and the owner kind of wants to, make the area look a little bit better. So that's what we're going to do with that, and then we're going to add 19 retail units on the site as well.
Do you have a presentation or anything showing that? Or any presentation, or are you just going to share?
Yes, sir. We have a concept plan we can provide.
Well, concept plan's not required as part of this rezoning, but applicants will sometimes have a presentation, so I wanted to give you the opportunity if you have something.
Yeah, like general concept plan's not required, like you
Right.
said, and spoke about it, but if they can share with you guys whatever they would like.
Okay, we'll continue, and then we may have some questions at the end.
Okay. Yeah, so like I said, we're going to take down the gas station, rebuild it. We're going to have 19 smaller retail units. We're looking at probably 20 by 70 will be the size of it. So it's going to be more kind of structured for more of your mom and pop type local businesses that'll be coming to the area, kind of give them more of more opportunities in the area for that type of stuff. Also, again, we're not exactly sure what all is going to go in there yet, because we're very, very early in the process. However, I mean, I'm sure y'all have noticed there's not much. It's kind of a dead space right there, for shopping or anything. You kind of got to either go to, into Pinehurst, into Aberdeen, or all the way up to Carthage. So it's going to, provide more shopping opportunities for, people that live nearby.
If I may speak to the gas station, so currently, the existing gas station, you have the pumps that are in between the public road and the building itself, and with the special requirements for Pinehurst UDO, with the fueling station, we would you require that the pumps are not in between the building and the public roads. So you would have the building, and then on the side of it, you'd have the pumps. So there'd be separation between the public road and proposed pump locations. And I'm sorry, it would also maintain a maximum of 3,500 square feet, which is approximately what the current building square footage is right now. So it would not increase, it would stay at that maximum 3,500 square foot.
Okay, do any members of the board have questions for the applicant that are relevant to their application as presented?
I just have a question about the retail units. Are they, I know you don't know a great deal, you haven't planned a lot of it now, but do you see them, envision them as parallel to 15501, or how would they, on this piece of property, where do you see them most likely?
Yes, sir. So with the concept we have now, most of them would be kind of parallel to 15501. So if you're driving by, you'd be able to, see the stores in there. I believe there may be one building that isn't quite parallel to it, but for the most part, they would be parallel. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Essentially like a strip mall, small.
Yes, sir. Yep. No problem.
Okay, any other questions for the applicant?
Would these additional retail function as out parcels where the people coming in would be liable for building and whatnot, or is there anticipation of creating a site plan for how this is all going to lay out?
Yes, sir. We are anticipating having a site plan and developing it ourselves.
DRC process and be vetted through all our channels.
Okay, thank you. We'll leave the public hearing open so we may continue dialogue with you, but you can return to your seats and
Thank you.
We'll move on through the process. Thank you. As we move into public comments, a couple of items for members of the public to note as staff is grabbing the sign-up sheet to see who we have that signed up. Your input today is appreciated and valuable. Our role, as Michael said, for the planning board is to conduct this hearing, to make a recommendation for village council, and what we pull out today and learn and discuss and deliberate will help them make their decision based on our recommendation. So we appreciate any comments you can provide. And our review today is legislative. None? Okay. Meaning that approval or denial of the plan is based solely on whether the applicant meets the conditions set forth in the Pinehurst Development Ordinance. So it looks like we do not have any signed up, but I will give the opportunity if anybody would like to speak. You may come to the microphone. Yep, yes, ma'am. Just introduce yourself and please state your address for the record.
My name is Patricia Gatlin, and I have some property there, and I'd like to know how far you all are planning to come back up to that property.
Oh, ma'am, if you can just address it to us, and then we'll redirect to the applicant as needed. So if you could just state that again into the microphone, I
Okay.
want to make sure we get your question and your address, ma'am.
My address is
Yes, ma'am.
Post Office Box 1475, Pinehurst, North Carolina. And my physical address is 207 Richmond Street, Taylortown.
Thank you.
I would like to know how far you all plan to bring this strip mall up, because I do have property, and it's right on 15501.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Any other questions or comments?
No, but
Well, it's not a Q&A necessarily, so you give your comments, and then we'll deliberate and ask either staff or the applicant to make a response as appropriate. But good question. Yes, ma'am. Any others desire to make a comment? Yes, ma'am. Please come forward.
Good afternoon or good evening. I'm Pauline Ross. My address is 311 Pine Hill Road, West End, North Carolina. I'm a part of the Eastwood Community Organization, which is centered around everything there in the community in which you're talking about here.
Yes, ma'am.
One of my questions for you tonight is there a copy of the conventional zoning request available to the public? What you had on the screen tonight? Okay, because I would like a copy if I could. My second question is, why is there a proposal to rezone Lee Road, which is across the street from the area that we're talking about? And I believe it's Brookside Road, which is behind the property that we're discussing.
So the only thing we're discussing rezoning today is the hatched area, and this is where the service station is, and this is the parcel behind it. Lee Road, it would maybe, is that in county jurisdiction? That might be a rezoning they're doing.
It is. The first letter that went out?
That would be the county,
Okay.
ma'am.
All right.
And
Okay.
Brookside Road, we do not have a rezoning in that area at the moment.
All right. Your notification process. It's my understanding that you do provide letter to the properties that will be affected by this. Is that correct?
The adjacent property owners,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. And then there's also a notice that is provided in the newspaper, local newspaper.
That's correct.
You also provide notice in the area.
There should be a sign on site.
Okay. They're very small. Very
We're
tiny,
limited,
hard to
we're
read.
limited by the size we can put out there.
I'm sorry, what was that?
We're limited by
You're
the size,
limited?
yeah.
What is the size requirement?
What is it? I'm not totally sure.
So technically, and if the board, if you're okay, I'll be
Please.
prepared to address
Yep.
Ms. Gatling's
Yep, if
question
you're ready.
too,
Yep.
yeah. So, yeah, the Village of Pinehurst is technically exempt from their signage regulations. However, the village has historically liked to maintain low sign clutter is the term. And so we followed our other temporary signage standards, which are typically 12 by 18 and exclusively green and white. So yes, they are intentionally not to jump out at you. So we do understand that they can be, their visibility is not very high. Ms. Gatling, on the side property, a minimum setback of 10 feet would be required for any building envelopes within the proposed zoning district, and a minimum setback of 20 feet for any building on the rear of their property.
Okay, so, excuse me, so you said that you're not discussing the property on the properties affected by this on Lee Road. You're just discussing what's on,
If there's something on Lee Road, that would be the county. That's their jurisdiction.
okay, but it's tied into this,
No, ma'am.
No,
it
ma'am.
is not?
No.
Okay, I thought, well, maybe I misunderstood from the very first letter that went out. Okay, all right. That section right there is a very busy highway, known for many accidents dating back to 1970. Several accidents have been there that were fatal. So I have a concern with 19 units being placed there at that location with the type of accidents that have happened in the past. So that's something I would like you to consider when doing
Yep.
this. That's all I have.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments for this hearing? If there are no other public comments, any other questions for the applicant at this point from the board? I'd ask for a motion to close the public hearing so we can re-enter the regular meeting for the purpose of board deliberation.
I move that we close the public hearing and return to the regular meeting.
A motion by Bill,
Second.
second by Ed, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are back into the regular meeting for deliberation. I'll remind the board that staff has prepared motion templates for us on this, so please review those as you have questions or comments and move towards a motion. To the comment about the traffic, so maybe, Michael, could you speak a little bit to, I know you told us where we are in this process, but when are things for the general public's benefit, such as traffic, general concept plan, when would that be considered in this process? Can you just highlight that?
If the rezoning was approved, and it would be up to the applicant to apply for, whatever they would want to put out there. And then with the TRC process, our TRC process is, it's fire, engineering, Moore County Public Utilities, planning and building. All that will be looked at during that time. We do kind of a back and forth with the applicant and us until everything is acceptable to the village and the county. So yeah, it could be a few months. It just depends on how quick the applicant gets us, their proposal. Right now, it's just conceptual what they have, so nothing. We haven't reviewed anything as far as that
understood.
on site yet. This is just a rezoning right now, and if this is approved, they'll get us their information. They'll apply for whatever they are applying for, and then we'll go on from there.
So it is, if I may, since this is not a conditional zoning, so we don't have sort of a solidified footprint per se, right? It is very important to note what potential or likely process or procedures for any type of development approvals that would take place if this rezoning were approved. And to that effect, what limitations or what allowances or public notifications would go out for said potential approval. So considering the constraints, what I'm going to call the constraints on that property, and not to disparage any of the remarks or aspirations of the number of units desired there on the property. Michael kind of, if you don't do what we do every day, certain things don't jump out at you. When he mentioned that the fact that the property's in a public water supply watershed, that has a limitation of 24% built upon area on that property, excluding the existing development that's on the property now. That area would not be included because it was in existence prior to the regulations, right? So you're talking about less than a quarter of that property could be improved to have a impervious area or built upon surface, unless a special intensity allocation were to be granted, right? Special intensity allocations per the village council policy could only be considered for properties that have an active petition for annexation or are ultimately annexed or in the corporate limits of the Village of Pinehurst. So that would require a public process and a public hearing. Also, if and which point in time, if the neighborhood commercial zoning designation is approved for this property and the applicant goes forward with the process and procedures to submit the required site plan for that property, if an area of disturbance, and I'm going to just go out on a limb and suggest that it would be after our new development ordinance comes into play, would meet a threshold of 3 acres or more, then that would be classified as a major site plan, which would require a public hearing once again by the board to make a recommendation to village council, and the village council would hold a public hearing. And the same notification procedures that were just spoke about in the public comment portion would be followed to everyone who got notification of this hearing tonight would get that notification as well.
So, the point of, 19 units, as was said, is a lot to think about, but the analysis of traffic and DOT entry, that this board would have a chance to review that if we were at that point for a general concept plan. So they've shared that information kind of freely, but it's not a requirement. but-
And based on the staff's conversation with the design team here, they've done some preliminary work. They've got some ideas, obviously. Also, it's known that, I forget the STIP project, but at least the number, but, DOT is widening 15501 in that area and on the side of the property of the subject property. And I believe, Carlo, if it's correct, and feel free to add on anything that I may not speak to correctly, but I believe they've had conversations with DOT and about what kind of access points are going to ultimately be required. So this property will ultimately shrink a little bit more whenever that right-of-way acquisition happens related to that project.
Yep, okay. That's helpful. Okay, so we'll start with Ed and kind of roll through the board. Any thoughts, comments? What do you think? Let's talk it out and get to a decision.
When I think about the comprehensive plan and the resort-style community we're in, my immediate thought goes to the benefit of 19 retail spaces out in that area when we want to focus in the comprehensive plan in the areas more towards Village Center. So that immediately comes to mind. And then making sure that if we are going to put in commercial businesses in a residential area, that it actually supports the local community, like there's a purpose for it to be there.
Mm-hmm.
There's also some reference in the plan about the ability for the commercial entities to support that local community, right? And so without knowing what could go there, and it's just 19 retail boxes of mom and pop or other things, when we have shops 3 miles down the road in Southern Pines. So I'm a little mixed on but I also look at that and say, how do you make that a residential plot?
Right.
And don't see that either. So.
Right, yeah, that's good. Bill?
Looking at the comprehensive plan, in general, I believe that this is consistent with a couple of the guiding principles of trying to balance conservation and growth, because if you look at the actual property itself as to what might be included even under the current zoning, and looking at the proposed zoning, I think that there's some value there. And then, of course, one of the other guiding principles is taking care of business and looking at ways to support local businesses, particular entrepreneurship and others. So I think there's some positives in here, though I do recognize that there's some challenges with the property itself.
Yeah, the nuance of, as both of you mentioned and the staff mentioned, of what does it mean to be consistent with the plan when the plan gives you these guiding principles, but also some specifics. But for instance, could the applicant improve or rebuild the gas station as it is, or that property has to be rezoned to do that?
Put on it, but a full redevelopment, no. No.
Yep.
And that's probably, this is one of those situations and applications where it's difficult because, a comprehensive plan is a visionary document. It's not going to always be able to be explicit and tell you if X, go Y, or if Y is Z, or if it's Y, keep it Y, right? And this area is a little different because of that comp plan designation and that the guiding principles, they're worded as such where you could draw some conclusions, almost either way, right? The other really interesting nuance to this is the existing use that's on that property. And it's in existence and it's allowed to exist as it is, not necessarily in a snow globe, but pretty much. And it can lead to more blighted existence of a nonconformity, because a property owner, if it is seen to be a land use that is desired to keep, and again, they're afforded that opportunity, they are limited to what real improvements they can do, or what, again, blighted conditions that they could really address on that property if it were to be non-conforming based on that zoning district. So those are some things I think that are very important for the board to weigh with this
Yep.
application. Obviously, on top of some of the comments that Ed mentioned about, what it is, what can it do, what can it support. We prepared the use table for the board, and it's in the staff report, which again, all this material that we've gone through tonight, in addition to other the application material, is available online. We wanted to highlight the difference between what could be allowed in the R5 and R20 district, and then what could be allowed in the neighborhood commercial zoning district. And it does vary quite a bit between the two.
Bruce?
Sometimes I think of myself as Dr. No, but I'm inclined to support the rezoning. I think it's an opportunity to improve the existing property. It's kind of at the end of the village, a kind of a gateway that maybe we could pay some attention to, and because we may not have the opportunities in some of the other entryways into the village that have kind of gotten away. So I think it's an opportunity to work with the applicant. I appreciate them being forthcoming and sharing a little bit about what their intentions are. I think they know that it's a rigorous process, and there'll be a number of other opportunities for us to look at this and hopefully work for you. But I think it could be a great opportunity for us to have something really nice at that end of the village. So I would be in support of the rezoning request. Thank you.
Devin?
So my thoughts are kind of similar to what Bruce was saying, that first, we're just looking at the rezoning right now, not the site plan. We're not approving exactly what's going to happen. And so if we just look at the rezoning, we're taking that existing use and we're going to make it conform with the comp plan and with the zoning map. And so that's good to have that be consistent. And with it being in that water and wetland conservation area, we're only going to have a quarter of the area be developed. So concerns of residents in the nearby area are not going to see buildings really get up to that building setback, because everything needs to access that road. We'll be able to see that when site plan comes up and vet that and ask questions again, make sure that happens. But because of that nature of where the gas station is and these potential mom and pop places, where again we can make sure that are they sticking to what they say when they bring that to us, and when our local professionals in the village also do the TRC process, they can make sure it's safe, it works. But I anticipate that they're going to have way more than the required setback and buffer requirements. So I don't think any of the local residents will be having a hardship of seeing this, of unwanted noise or visuals there. So I think that, yeah, it's an opportunity for the right kind of growth in the area, where they have a potential to improve existing conditions and make it conform with the comp plan compared to how it is right now.
Yeah, well said. So the staff highlighted a couple things in their presentation. One, the places in the comp plan where it's not necessarily consistent, and then others where an approval motion could be consistent with the guiding principles. So if we approve it, again, the conservation and growth map would be updated. And when you look at that map, and you look at what's on there now, which is this kind of little perimeter of suburban, I mean, it's kind of ironic. I mean, suburban center, does envision not just residential, but some other uses there, not necessarily maybe neighborhood commercial that's covered under other growthy areas. But I guess I'm getting to is it does seem like an improvement to the map, if that's the direction that we head. Because I guess from what Alex said, that was designated just based on what the zoning was at the time, so maybe not necessarily thought given to total function within the ETJ. And it is consistent, you know, you drive down that road, you've got some shops on the other side,
Other side.
a little further down towards 73, so wouldn't be inconsistent with what the county has. Okay, are we ready for a motion?
Could I ask staff to pull up those guiding principles again?
There are also a couple of implementation strategies which were referenced in the staff report, which aren't included with this slide here. We could pull that up too for the board, or the board feels like it's worthwhile for the public to see that too. So, yeah, Michael, if you could pull up the page 4 of the staff report.
While you're doing that, I'll read them. Strategy 2.17, review the zoning regulations for areas identified for future development to ensure that the zoning permits the desired scale of development. Conversely, ensure that the zoning in place for any new areas identified for development does not permit undesirable patterns. And then 7.9 emphasizes the need to continue to protect water features, including lakes, ponds, streams, wetlands, and floodplains with appropriate development regulations. It does seem like improvement to that gas station would be a benefit to the floodplain on the north side. There you go. Thank you. Okay.
I'm ready to make a motion. I move to the Planning and Zoning Board to recommend approval to the Pinehurst Village Council and find that the proposed rezoning is consistent with the 2019 Comprehensive Plan, Guiding Principle 2, Balancing Conservation and Growth, Guiding Principle number 5, Taking Care of Business, and Implementation Strategy 7.9.
We have a motion by Devin.
Second.
We have a second by Bruce. We'll vote, a roll call vote starting from the left.
Aye.
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 Motion carries with a vote of 4-0. Thank you to the applicant and everyone from the public for your comments this evening. Let me ask the board, are we good to continue into the next public hearing, or does anybody need a break? A little break? Yeah, let's do it. Let's do a 5-minute break.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll recess and reconvene for our second public hearing in 5 minutes. Good evening. I'd like to reconvene our meeting as we look towards our next item on the agenda. We have a second public hearing this evening. It's in the world of planning and zoning, we call this a double header. So thanks for those that are here. The next item is a conditional rezoning request for 275 McCaskill Road. First, I'd like to ask if any members of this board want to declare any potential conflicts of interest with this application. That being the case, I would look for a motion to recess the regular meeting and enter into the public hearing.
I move that we recess the regular meeting and move into the public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Bill, second by Devin. All in favor?
Aye.
We have now entered into the public hearing. Maria, welcome. If you'll lead us in the staff presentation.
I sure will. All right. Our second public hearing tonight is to hear a official zoning map amendment for approximately 2.82 acres of land located at 275 McCaskill Road. It's further identified as parcel ID number 000-25962. The proposed map amendment would zone the property from Village Place Form-Based District, Blocks H and I, to Village Place Form-Based District, Blocks H and I Conditional District. You'll hear that a lot tonight. The proposed zoning and associated general concept plan would allow for the development of two-story mixed-use buildings with associated parking. The owner is 490 Broad LLC, and the applicant is Bogle Firm Architecture. Currently, the land is undeveloped, and the public hearing was noticed in accordance with North Carolina General Statutes and the PDO. So we're here tonight for a conditional zoning map amendment. This will be a little bit different than the first one, which was a conventional rezoning. So with this, a general concept plan is needed. It's still a legislative decision in process, so you have to have this public hearing. But with a conditional zoning, the applicant or the board can propose specific conditions. If any conditions are asked for, they must be mutually agreed upon. The public hearing that is held with you would forward a recommendation to council, and that allows you to consider the adopted comprehensive plan, any other plans, the staff recommendation that you'll hear tonight, as well as any input from the public. So again, it is a conditional zoning for 2.82 acres in the Village Place Form-Based District. It is blocks H and I, and if you rezone it tonight, it'll be part of a conditional district. It is for two-story buildings, so the first building would be along Rattlesnake Trail. It would be 2 stories. First floor would be commercial retail uses with residential on the second floor, and that building would be approximately 15,400 square feet. The second building would be along McCaskill Road. Same setup, residential on the second floor, commercial retail on the first floor with 19,600 square feet. And then parking lot would be in the rear of the buildings, and they are proposing 137 parking spaces. 14 of those would be divided up into 2 detached garages for the residential use. It's located at the corner of McCaskill Road and Rattlesnake Trail. It is in the village's corporate limits. And with the application is the general concept plan, trip generation, the neighborhood meeting information, which you all got this afternoon, and also a 2016 approved general concept plan and the ordinance. So here we have the site plan that they are proposing. And again, you can see the building along Rattlesnake Trail, the building along McCaskill Road. I have so many. And then the 2 detached garages in the rear. They would have sidewalks along Rattlesnake Trail. There are already sidewalks existing along McCaskill Road. The elevations that they are proposing. So here, the top one is your view from McCaskill Road. And then here we have the view from the second building along Rattlesnake Trail, the side of the building on McCaskill Road, and then the side of the building on Rattlesnake Trail. Here's a zoning map that shows you what's around the property. So the hashed out property is the proposed property for the development to be on. To the north, you can see there's public conservation. To the west is the Greens Apartments. To the south is more commercial, as well as to the east, along with the one property that is zoned neighborhood commercial, which is currently vacant. Their proposal is including 15% open space. The dimensions for the form-based district require at least 8%. Landscaping will be required for the parking, which will be reviewed when the site plan is reviewed. It is in the watershed, which limits the development to 24% unless a special intensity allocation is granted. And with the approval of this conditional zoning request, the SIA would be automatically approved as well. Stormwater management will be in an underground detention system in the northwest portion of the property. Water and sewer would be through Moore County. The neighborhood meeting again was done on the 2nd, and they did provide a report. Access, there'll be 2 access points, one off McCaskill Road and one off Rattlesnake Trail. Sidewalks along Rattlesnake Trail, and again, the parking of 137 spaces. The dimensional criteria for the form-based district, you can see that they are meeting all of the required dimensions, as well as exceeding many of them. So when you are making your decision for your recommendation this evening, you need to make sure it's consistent with various plans. One of those is the 2019 comp plan. And in that, we have 7 guiding principles. One of those is guiding principle 2, balancing conservation and growth. And that does call for high quality development and ensuring that we're balancing growth and development. The focus area 4, which this is in, does classify this area as suburban center, which this would meet. And it also called for implementation strategy 2.8, which required the village to come up with small area plans for Village Place, which we have done. And that is one of the plans that you also need to look at to make sure it is consistent with tonight. So that was passed in 2003, along with our form-based guidance plan. And one of the goals of that was to explore different types of buildings. So one of those is mixed use, which this would meet. They also give recommendations for site design, landscape design, street designs, as well as architectural designs. And I do believe that the proposed plan is consistent with both of those plans. It also has a regulating plan in it, which gives us kind of the building types in the different areas, different blocks, as well as building heights. So one of the building types in blocks H and I is mixed use, which this is. And building heights are from 1 to 2 stories, with a maximum of 35 feet tall. And again, this does match that. In 2016, Council approved a general concept plan that was for the Greens, which was phase 1, and then a mixed use area with parking adjacent to it, which was phase 2. So you can see here, this is the Greens, which was done. And this was the proposed phase 2 with the mixed use. And it was for 2 mixed use buildings of up to 35,000 square feet with associated parking, which again, the plan before you does meet. So again, when you're considering the request, you need to decide if they are consistent with the different plans, the comp plans, small area plans, form-based guidance plans. And staff does believe that it is consistent with the 2019 comp plan as well as the small area plans. It is also consistent with the PDO, meets our standards for that, and the Village Place Form-Based District guidance. So your job tonight is to conduct the public hearing, review the material that was submitted along with the staff recommendation. And then after the public hearing, you can take one of the following actions. You can recommend approval of the rezoning and make a consistency statement that is consistent with the 2019 comp plan and other plans. You can recommend denial for the rezoning, make a statement of the consistency with the 2019 comp plans and other plans. Or if you feel you need more information, you can continue the meeting, keeping in mind that if you don't make a decision within 30 days, council can take action. And again, staff does recommend the approval. We do feel it is consistent with the comp plan, the small area plans, the form-based guidance plan, as well as the previously approved general concept plan. And it does meet the requirements of the PDO and the form-based guidance plan. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Maria. So obviously they're in the small area, we're in Village Place, but there aren't any conditions being requested. I mean, they're meeting.
Correct. They are not requesting any conditions, but any new development that goes on in our form-based district has to go through the conditional zoning process.
It seems like nuances are the theme of the evening. This one particularly meaning, there was an entitlement approved, over 9 years ago for this property. The vesting has lapsed, and we changed the underlying zoning. But when we changed that underlying zoning, we kept everything consistent with what that prior approval was. The one thing that we changed was the process for those subsequent approvals. Even the mentioning of the special intensity allocation, since that conditional district rezoning was approved in 2016, that land's already been allocated. So special intensity allocation's also already been granted for the second phase of that project, which was approved in 2016. And you have a conditional zoning request before you with no development conditions. However, you have a site-specific development plan to review.
Right.
Unlike the previous hearing.
And so the 70% is the limit but really that's based on the prior approval.
It is based on the underlying zoning as well as the maximum allowed in the watershed. Even with the intensity allocation, there's still a ceiling there that's placed.
Right. And they're at 67%. Yep, okay. Any other questions for staff before we bring the applicant up? Okay. For now, we will hear from the applicant, after which we will use a sign-up sheet to invite members of the public to speak. So ready yourself for that. So I will invite the applicant up. Please introduce yourself, state your address for the record.
Pete Bogle, I'm the architect on the project, 110 North Main Street, Salisbury. This has been an interesting one. My background is also I've been on a planning board, been the chair of Rowan County's planning board for a number of years. So this one moving from VMU to VMU CD to then that CD went away, as Alex mentioned, then gets put back into a form-based district. So yeah, we're presenting a conditional district request with no conditions, which is kind of the summary of the narrative. That was the first of the documents that we submitted. We did hold the neighborhood meeting. Retson Companies ran that. That was all invitations were sent out to all of the adjacent property owners as was required, and they held that meeting. and nobody showed up. So as they said, that was an overwhelming success. There were no complaints, no negative comments. However, they have received at least one email of support from neighbors. And these are just showing all of the different property owners who were notified. And that's submitted as part of the record. This is the existing site plan. It's not a lot there other than the greens and the developed connection road that they already built as part of their development of the greens. And of course, we'll be building directly off of that. As you saw on the previous greens project, there were two buildings here and here. The only use that's listed in the VPFBD for this site is mixed use, which is what we want to do. And we're putting buildings right where those had shown. Just more site images there. And then here are the two buildings, mixed use of 9,800 square foot footprint along along McCaskill and one along Rattlesnake. And here are the two garage pieces in the back. And the parking as developed along back here. We did a couple of different parking count studies, knowing that the mixed use, you don't know exactly what the use is going to be, and there are some different parking requirements for restaurants or for retail. And so we did a couple of different calculations and tried to balance about what we thought it would be if there were restaurants, if there were retail. And that's how we ended up with 137 spaces. And then just a preliminary site grading plan from our civil that we've started in on already. We do know that we would need to extend a water line along here to connect to provide fire suppression to each of these buildings. So another piece of public improvement there, and the sidewalk that would be along here as well. Then elevations, which you saw, take you into a three-dimensional a little bit, which you haven't seen yet. So seeing the site in 3 dimensions a little bit, we cheated. The model is flat. There is a decent amount of drop back here that we're going to have to mitigate and grade. We are already working with Dr. J.H. Carter for the woodpecker protection. Really, there's one existing tree up here and then some scrub back here, but they're working on that, getting that letter to us. And then seeing the building in some preliminary colors, at least, of the different brick colors. The building is designed with a lot of brick, with indentations, accents, rowlocks, and soldier courses to really break that up along there, with balconies that also act as canopies over the retail entrances. And here's the corner, standing at the corner of Rattlesnake and McCaskill. And then back along Rattlesnake. And then into the site a little bit, seeing the garages here behind, we would use similar materials as what we use on the building itself. And then some potential materials. And I had this one in here, but Maria already presented it. This is the site, and the request is, or the requirement for the site is mixed use, and that is the request. And then our conditions table is my last piece here, and you can see that of all of the conditions that we're supposed to respond to, we've said none to all of them. And that's it.
Thank you. Thank you for presentation. Also, thank you for the additional graphics and elevations. Those are helpful. Any questions for the applicant from the board at this time?
You mentioned having worked with civil engineers on this. I assume they've vetted that size of the underground stormwater retention, or is that something still in the works?
It's preliminary, but yeah, they've at least studied it enough to say that, yeah, it's going to fit down here. Now, we don't have any soil perk tests or anything like that yet to finalize that, but it's close.
At this stage, the general depiction and the type is what's required, but just for the existing development is also, the apartment is also served with the similar type facility, and it's, to our knowledge, there's not had any issues.
You guys have some lovely sand here. I live on clay in Salisbury, and those don't work. But your sand is fantastic.
And if I may,
Oh, yes, please introduce yourself. Yes, ma'am.
my name's Rihanna Smith. I'm with Smith Bowers. We're the attorney for the applicant. My address is 127 West Hargett Street, Suite 504 in Raleigh. And really, I'm here just to emphasize that what we're requesting is substantially similar to the plan that this council already approved in 2016. We just had, as Alex pointed out, that interim reclassification, if you will. But this, again, is substantially similar to that plan that was approved, as well as all the new plans you have, the small town plans, your PDO and so forth. But we're happy to answer any other questions you may have about what that timeline looked like.
Thank you. I think we have a pretty good summary from staff, but appreciate you being here, and we'll see if the board has any questions. Yeah, anything else?
Nothing.
We've got an architect and an attorney here. So
I
this
know.
is, I feel like we should ask them something. So just one last question on the underground. So conceptually, the intention is for that basin to handle the site, not for it to just be a portion, but for that
Oh,
basin
no,
to be sized. to
it
handle
is sized for our site.
For the whole
yes.
site, yeah, okay. And I appreciate you explaining the scenarios, because I was wondering about, obviously with mixed use, how do you anticipate? Can staff speak a little bit to, obviously they've given two scenarios. One is more, say, restrictive in that it's maybe higher density with more restaurants, so there's a higher count. With approval, what is, obviously we've approved the number of parking spots and that's it from this day forward. So if that changes or the use changes, it doesn't really matter. Like, they can develop it as they see fit moving forward, or how does that work?
As far as the parking,
Mm-hmm.
well, it would be reviewed as far as what their uses, the calculations for their uses, if that changed slightly.
Okay.
But I think having the scenario with the restaurants, which greatly increases the amount of parking that they need, I think they'd be fine.
Yeah.
If they took the restaurant use out, it would decrease a lot,
Right.
which could bring up problems if they had
So yeah,
later.
if they use scenario one, for instance, which is the lower number,
Right.
and then decided to do it, they would have to come back and potentially address the parking requirement then. So this doesn't alleviate them having to meet parking requirements based on use in the future. Correct, okay.
Yeah, and thinking through this, and obviously now that we're here in the hearing, and there will be another hearing by the village council who will make that final decision, I think of all the things, I mean, we've highlighted just how clearly consistent this development proposal is with any previous approvals, as well as any subsequent safeguards or development standards that we put on this property following that previous approval, and that's the reason why we placed those standards on to match those, is the only thing that might be in flux, really, depending on the uses, will be that parking. So I think this would be an opportunity for some condition to be negotiated between the applicant and the village to kind of put some sort of number there so we know. Historically, the village has always wanted more off-street parking, so we don't have issues with parking going out into our streets. But also, you don't want a sea of wasteland of wasted parking spaces and additional impervious surface if you can help it. So, I would recommend that we kind of negotiate and talk through what we think would be an appropriate range, because we don't want to put them in a box necessarily to what their bottom retail uses or office space uses or assemblage or mix of those uses could be. We wanted a mixed-use development in this area, but we don't want to, and we also, for staff, we don't want to create an issue in the future where if there's tenant turnover in there and then, oh, no, you can't put this restaurant now in or this other facility in because you only parked to whatever the lower threshold of the two were.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, please introduce yourself.
Richard Vincent, 130 Short Road, Pinehurst. And we're, Bogle Architecture Firm is the applicant, but obviously we're on the Retson side as the developer and the GC, and this is the team. I'd feel remiss not to say something because they've done such a good job. You know, on the parking side, it's just really hard to nail down uses 12 months, 13, 15 months out. This project hasn't really been made public up until now. So it's really not soliciting any tenant interest to find out who the businesses are. So it's hard to nail down uses. Living in the village, I could assure you, you're not going to have 15,000 square feet of restaurant at the bottom of this building. It's just not going to happen. Right. I mean, between the restaurants on McIntyre, where there's Tatabon and Maxie's, those kinds of restaurants, there's just not a need for 5 or 6 additional restaurants here. What we envision is probably your coffee shop, your bakery, maybe a small deli, things like that. But we envision a lot of office use here as well, which is not as parking intensive. And what really has driven this project is the other project that many of you are aware of, which is on the corner of Kelly and McIntyre, and seeing the outpouring of tenant interest and small businesses within the community that need space. There is such a void and shortfall of commercial space, not just in our entire market in Moore County, but in the primary sort of micro markets like the Southern Pines and in the village of Pinehurst. And tenants are literally fighting over small 500 square foot spaces. So many of them get underwater every single time there's a hard rain. They're subterranean. So there's just, that's sort of the special character of that village, but there's just such a shortfall of space. So doing that project and what we learned through that was there is just a huge demand to service existing businesses that want to grow and new businesses that want to come to the market. So we say retail, you say restaurant, but it's going to be a blend of all of those things. Sure. We don't anticipate a 5,000 to 6,000 square foot sit-down restaurant here. You know, it'll be smaller, truly mom and pop tenants, many of which are already within the community. So on the parking side, Alex, to cover that, it's not something, we say we have no conditions here, but really there are conditions because that's what the small area plan did. There were no conditions in 2016, but there are conditions and we've met all those conditions. I think there's the 137 parks, I'm racking my head here, I don't know if there's another property in the village that has 137 parking spaces. So this is a massive amount of parking for any project within the village, and we're very confident that the uses at the end of the day that shake out will be adequately parked with what we have here. If anything, we're going to be excessively parked for what's going to occupy these buildings.
So our site plan actually does address so mixed use is one of those things where you never know, how much parking you're going to need. But what we have listed here in this scenario, we do list a total number of seats, which would be a maximum number of seats, as 261. Now, that could be one restaurant, that could be several different restaurants, smaller restaurants throughout the spaces. But in that way, that kind of sets that condition already of we could have this mix of retail up to this much and restaurants up to this much, and we meet the parking requirements.
I think the 2016 plan also had 143 spaces that was approved for, so.
I appreciate it. I think I'm not sharing any of this out of concern for not enough parking. I think it is the point of interest because when you think about mixed use, the exact reasons you said, and as Alex mentioned, you don't want an inundation of more than you need. Now every application is different, but in this case, as you said, there's a lot. And we're going to probably have other mixed use if things go as the small area plans are designed in this area. So I think this is a good discussion. It's good for us to think about as a board because what you've done is helpful in having multiple scenarios. I'm thinking about what you said, Alex, and how, what a condition might look like tied to parking with the, do you use the lower and upper bounds of scenario 1 and 2, between 71 and 136. It's a big swing, but it needs to be helpful for staff as they're enforcing this and walking down the path towards a development if that's where we're headed. But I don't know. I don't think anybody's saying let's put more in there. But if the amount of spaces here will probably have some play as we go into other areas in the plan, so. Any other thoughts? Just, I appreciate what you guys shared.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Jumping in offer on that, Matt. Yeah, it's almost as if we're conditioning ourselves if we were held to this. If you at 35, 140 would be parked almost 4 to 1 per 1,000 square foot. A lot of medical uses, which is one of the most intense uses out there. We have a project in Hope Mills right now, and the UDO requires three per 1,000 square feet for medical. Other places, most medical users are 4.5 per 1,000 square feet, sometimes five parks per 1,000 square feet. But at 137, we're almost touching 4 per 1,000. That is, retail typically is 3. Office is 3. Some municipalities have 2 and 3 per 1,000. So on the retail and the office, we're heavy. Again, what's skewing this is if it's restaurant uses, but if there was a condition on maybe restricting the square footage of restaurant, maybe through tables or something like that, that would be amenable, because I think from our perspective, we just don't envision 17,000 square feet of restaurant. But as we have it there, we've done our best fair guess, very conservative estimate to cover parking for the project.
So if we don't put a condition on parking, I know what's in the application, but parking is not one of the current conditions that's on there. So basically that would just mean when applications are put forward for different developments, they would just have to meet it based on staff's administrative review, whatever the parking requirement is for that use. Is that?
So basically
is
what
that
an
fair?
applicant would do when they come and get their full detailed site plan review, they will indicate at the time how that usage breakdown will be and prove to us that they've met the requirement that we have in place at that time. In the future, if uses change and turn over through a zoning use permit, that's one of the things that we have to vet on top of a few others. And in some cases, it has changed where there is a more intense use classification for parking, so additional parking is needed. So it kind of will remain in flux. There will be something finite at time of detailed site plan application, and then that requires us to then properly vet through the actual building permit review too, and how that space is being proposed and used.
Yeah, it seems like you don't want to necessarily put a condition on it at this point.
It looks like in 2016, what they did was they just put a condition of a ratio, number of spaces, a little over 4 per 1,000 square feet. One on the 30,000 square foot side and the other on the 35,000 square foot side of the building.
Yeah, so
Not advocating for that, I'm just
right,
context.
just that's what it was. The general concept plan shows us that based on these uses, there is room on this site if it was developed to this.
At the
based on these uses for
maximum
this
that it could
parking.
allow, yeah.
Yeah, which I feel like is the purpose of this plan.
And that puts you again at what percentage of impervious surface? I heard it in the
Yeah.
60.
Yeah, and maybe another good point, I think you raised, Alex, if you'd carried on talking for another 10 seconds, is there's place to squeeze more parking on here, but what was attractive about those conditions that we're under was the open space. And any additional parking you add on here, you're gonna take away from open space, as you said, and you're gonna increase impervious surface. So what we've tried to do is create as much blend as we can with the natural aesthetic here and keep as much green space as we can.
One thing we do need to be aware of is that there are lists of allowed changes or modifications to approved conditional district rezonings and subsequent or the corresponding general concept plan that are allowed, that are handled administratively, and there are those that are listed as major, which require that this whole process again. And one of those is increase in impervious surface area or decrease in open space. So we don't want to, I think to that point, it needs to be open-ended enough to where we don't agree to 100 spaces. And then turns out Richard's aspirations are a little low and there are a need for more restaurant spaces or a larger restaurant or whatever, a medical clinic that you meant, anything that would require additional spaces. And then here we are kind of stuck in a procedural nightmare.
that case, it's good that we've actually maximized it here. So if we come back later and say, well, we really don't need those back parking lots and everything's good, we can, that would be an amendment you guys can make to the CD because we're decreasing impervious.
If the record shows and what's approved ultimately, again, this is a recommendation with you guys, ultimately what's approved by village council, if it showed these two scenarios, the less intense and the most intense, and that they both can be met, and that record's clear, I think it covers that any type of procedural snafu or change or modifications that we need to handle administratively.
So on mixed use, I mean, for use to change, mixed use covers a lot of uses, right? So, I mean, it's specific based on what the use is that determines the amount of parking. So, it would have to be, just a deviation from what's allowed under mixed use for it to change either the intensity or, I guess at some point could potentially change the whole concept plan, but mixed use is that for a reason, right?
Right. And right now, they're kind of just estimating based on what they think will go in there. And like Alex said, in the future, if businesses that are in there change, we have to review what that use is and what the parking is at that time to make sure they're meeting that. So if it turned into all restaurants, you'd want to make sure that there's enough parking.
It's good. It's good to think about that. I like that. Just thinking about what's across the street and where more potential mixed use is going to go and how those conversations about parking will be. Any other questions or comments for the applicant before I let them return to their seats? Devin?
Just one clarification, making sure I'm on the same page with staff. So if we approve, say, the site that's shown with the 137, they would have to come back again if they increased impervious from what is proposed or reduced open space. That would have to be brought forward. But they could say, oh, we don't need as much parking as we originally had approved. That doesn't have to come in front of us if they do less intensity on parking. Is that correct? Or
That's
does
correct.
that need a condition?
You're correct. But again, if we approve this general concept plan with those both scenarios, then they're covered from either of those ranges.
Okay.
What's the open space at now?
15.
It's right at 50. I know that's the requirement, but is that what are they right at the requirement?
8 is the group. 8 is the requirement.
We're at 50, almost double
Okay.
that.
And you feel confident you can hit everything with what you've got on that plan?
As we said,
Use
it's just
the
hard.
microphone.
Sorry, I know for the record, it's just hard to know 12 months, but based on the experience we have, which is, I would say, pretty focused in this area, and we've done a lot of polling with other, we know a lot of the small businesses, a lot of them we consider friends. This is our best guess at what we believe would serve the Pinehurst community in the best possible way. Now, if there's a pivot, if it goes beyond the limits of something can be handled administratively by staff, we'll be back in front of this great board and we'll do it again. But from the information we have today, and Peyton has done a phenomenal job as he does, and has done on these applications in the past, we've tried to cover everything that we think could possibly come up. We'll catch everything, but you guys have so many checks and balances, staff does a great job. There's other hurdles we'll have to cover as we go along, so.
Okay. With that, I'll thank the applicant for their comments. You may return to your seat.
Thank you all.
Caveat that we may call you back. So now we'll move to the public comment portion. Staff will check and see who we have signed up. Same comments I made before hold here as well. We appreciate the comments. I will additional caveat, if it's appropriate, we'll respond in the moment, but generally we'll receive the public comments and then take those and then make a decision about deliberation or requesting additional information from the applicant or staff. Okay. So we don't have anybody signed up currently, but is there anybody here who would like to speak? You're welcome to. If not, based on the results of today, again, there will be a public hearing with Village Council, so you always have a chance to speak in that hearing. With that, with no public comments, I would ask for a motion to close the public hearing and re-enter the regular meeting for the purpose of board deliberation.
I move that we close the public hearing and return to the regular meeting for the purposes of deliberation.
Motion by Bill,
Second.
second by Ed. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We are out of the public hearing. Let's deliberate. We've done kind of some preliminary deliberation, I think, with staff and the applicant, but again, I think that's good, healthy. I mean, that's the intention of these small area plans, is to generate some of this good discussion as we think about the practicality of parking and other things. So I'm going to start with Devin this time, and then we'll just go around the horn.
I think my only thing that I'm still curious about getting input or clarification on with you guys is since there's two parking scenarios shown on the plan, if we approved it as is, they could do either one. So as far as a condition would go, would we just say the plan is shown with the 137 spaces, we approve that, and then if they want to do less, they can, but at least we're approving that maximize, which still exceeds open space requirements, so then they won't have to come back again at another time to say, oh, we're increasing this, like, or since both are technically approved, is there any need to really say any clarification there, or are we good in both ways of how it's shown there?
I guess that's a question for staff. Like, we don't have parking on the conditions table, so we don't need to say anything about it.
No, they're meeting that requirement, so.
And both parking scenarios are called up in writing in that top left
Right.
corner, right? So it's,
We'll remind the board that any recommendation or conditions would have to be mutually agreed upon by the applicant and this board.
I mean, we could ask for a plan with the lower scenario 1 parking, see what that looks like, but. Okay. Bruce? Okay. Bill?
I don't have any other questions, comments. Just curious about that range. It's interesting. How that's going to work out.
yeah, I have no comments. I think it's a well thought out plan and very interested to see it come together.
Yeah, I was flipping through the copy of the small area plan, and obviously this was approved in 16, so what's in the small area plan shows this layout, but as we're now closer to it becoming reality, you think about the shape of that area taking form, you know, I mean, it looks like it was intended, which is pretty cool. Okay, well, staff has prepared motion templates for you. Make sure as whoever's working on a motion, take note of the whether guiding principles or implementation strategies from the long-range plan, as well as the small area plan and the general concept plan for this from 2016. Okay, Bill?
I move the Planning and Zoning Board recommend approval to the Pinehurst Village Council and find that the proposed rezoning is consistent with the 2019 Comprehensive Plan, and in particular consistent with the Conservation and Growth Map contained within the Comprehensive Plan, along with Guiding Principle 2, Implementation Strategies 2.8, and consistent with the Village Place Small Area Plan and approved General Concept Plan from back in 2016.
Second.
We have a motion from Bill, a second from Devin. We'll vote, a roll call vote starting from the left.
Aye.
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 Aye. And the motion carries with a vote of 4-0. Thank you to the applicant for your application and to the public for their presence here today. With that, we will move continuing on our agenda to the next item, which I believe is looking to our next meeting, January 8th. How are we looking?
So we will be welcoming our newest member at that meeting, Les Flesher, so we'll be excited to actually have him participate. And I'm looking for a nod from Maria on whether or not we're going to expect a caseload for the 8th.
I have not heard anything, so I think so, but I'm not positive.
Okay, so, and also reminder that this is the second Thursday of the month, because we're not celebrating New Year's in a public hearing here with everyone, but we can just have that celebration on the 8th.
Okay. Well, this is our last meeting before Christmas, so Merry Christmas, staff.
Christmas.
With that, can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Motion from Bruce, second from Bill. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Meeting's adjourned at 5:40 PM.